Good afternoon. Welcome to the TOS session at the 143rd Annual Convention of the Theosophical Society. I have been asked to point out that we have a box over there on that little table for questions and answers for the question and answer panel session. If you would put your questions there, please. We have three speakers today, Svitlana, Gavrylenko, Suvralina, and myself. And my part, I'm going to split into two pieces. I'm going to begin with giving you just a very short summary of a few of the things that have happened in the TOS, are happening in the TOS internationally. Svitlana will speak, Suvralina will speak, and then I will give my talk at the very end. Okay. So the Theosophical Order of Service is currently present in 35 of the 55, do I have that number right, Tim? Countries in which the TS is present. 70? That's what I thought. I thought that was wrong. 35 of the 70 countries where the TS is active. No new groups were formed this year, although interest has been shown by people in Russia and in Indonesia. The TOS has several outreach avenues. David Stein of the TOS Canada is the editor of our quarterly e-newsletter. It's called TOS In Touch Online. Our webmaster, Rosa Ulick, is busy creating a new website that promises to be both beautiful and user-friendly. Our website address currently remains www.international.theoservice.org. We continue to increase the activity on our Facebook page, and our following is growing. This year, the 4th TOS International Conference was held in Singapore on 9 and 10 August. Nearly 70 delegates from 17 countries attended. Delegates reported on their work with beautifully illustrated presentations detailing their many and varied service activities, and each country prepared action plans for the next 5 years. The dedication to service of TOS groups and individuals around the world benefited thousands of poor students, needy persons, ailing patients, aged men and women, the blind, handicapped, orphans, animals, and the environment. This year, many of our TOS groups worldwide collected or donated money to help with ongoing relief efforts in Kerala, India. Some of the folks in Kerala who are TOS members actually risked their lives in the rescue efforts of those who were stranded by the floods. TOS efforts in India, Canada, New Zealand, and Brazil are typical of those in all TOS countries. Besides many regional and local service projects, the service of more than the 120 groups of the TOS in India has benefited thousands through its permanent projects, many of which are concerned with educational support for underprivileged children and providing mobility aids. We learned just yesterday that the Mobility Aid Project, that is a national project of the TOS India, and has been going on for 20 years, is being replaced. The reason it's being replaced is because the government and other NGOs are now interested in supplying mobility aids, so we're moving on to something else. And what it is being replaced with is women's empowerment. I'm personally very happy about that. It's been something we've been encouraging for several years now. The TOS India runs or supports schools in many of its regions, as well as orphanages, tailoring training centers, and computer centers. These include a school for street children at Assam and a hostel for blind students at Bihar. During the past year, the TOS in Canada has moved forward steadily in making the TOS and its work better known. holding events and raising thousands of dollars for its 3 major fundraising projects, which support animal welfare initiatives at Adyar, the Golden Link College in the Philippines, and the Tibetan Delic Hospital in Dharamsala, where poor and destitute patients are given free medical care. The New Zealand TOS, as well, continued its sponsorship of 2 literacy centers in Pakistan, as well as the individual child sponsorships in both Pakistan and India of 44 children. In addition, their Jeffrey Hodson Memorial Scholarship Fund in the Philippines will support 3 children annually from 2018. Brazil this year, Teresa Botaro Miranda took over the reins as the president of the TOS in Brazil this year as they celebrated their 110th anniversary. Many of the Brazilian groups participate in the TOS healing ritual as a primary area of focus. Funds are raised for a variety of purposes, including helping the homeless and to aid needy children. Several groups also participate in animal welfare projects. The work that TOS groups around the world are doing follows HPB's teachings in the Key to Theosophy, that Theosophists should live a life of active altruism. I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Svitlana Gavrylenko. Svitlana lives in Kiev, Ukraine. She has been a Theosophical Society member since 1998 and is currently the ongoing secretary of the TS in the Ukraine. The organizing secretary, Svitlana is a PhD who is assistant professor in mathematics, probability theory, at the National Agrarian University, now retired. She is head of the organizing committee of the annual International Kiev Forum, Spiritual Development for Man and Society, and head of the Council of Committee for Ethics and Humanitarian Expertising. So, now, we have a little technical stuff to take care of first.
Dear brothers and sisters, I have a great pleasure and honor to speak to you at this annual convention. This is my 10th visit to Adyar. Thank you, Nancy, for giving me the opportunity to address the TOS session of this convention. First of all, I would like to point out that the TOS efforts reflects the Theosophical Society's worldwide spiritual maturity and altruistic devotion, just like selfless devotion and service for the sake of common good is a measure of spiritual maturity and disciple qualification or efficacy to each individual aspirant, including each of the TS member. Certainly, we perform our service not only as a part of TOS activities, and this, in fact, should not be ignored. For example, currently, in our country, the voluntary movement associated with long military and humanitarian crises is widely spread. It arose from people's desire to at least partially take over the responsibility for resolving the problems which our government is not capable to decide. But this is the basic issues of the very existence of our nation and our state. Ukrainian TS members participate in this process as well. However, this is a tendency not to present such voluntary service activities as TOS efforts, since, firstly, these activities are extremely diverse and individual-based, and secondly, people tend to avoid publicity because of their modesty. Another reason for such a tendency is that such activities are associated very closely with politics, and the Theosophical Society carries out activities out of politics. In order to illustrate the scenario, I can just put forward my own experience. After the beginning of military actions in the east of our country, I offered a shelter for half a year at my place to my Theosophical friend and her son, who had to leave their home in the eastern region of Ukraine. Then another family from the eastern regions has been staying with me also for half a year. We have never met before, but now we are close friends. A lot of clothes, shoes, home appliances have been given to people who were forced to leave their homes. The regular financial help to hospitals continues for 4 years now. None of the activities mentioned above was included in TOS reports, and many Ukrainian members do the same. Now I would like to touch the question, what is suffering? According to Wikipedia, suffering is a set of extremely unpleasant, burdensome, and painful sensations experienced by a living being, which are associated with physical and emotional discomfort, pain, stress, or torments. According to dictionaries, suffering is a physical or moral pain or torment. Suffering is familiar to each person. It's unlikely that someone succeeded to avoid it. Many people think that the suffering is never ending, and then that it is an endless labyrinth. In the course of suffering, the person makes effort to get rid of sufferings. However, very often, these efforts bring even more suffering subsequently both to the person himself and to other living beings. We beat about the bush as long as we place the blame for our sufferings on external circumstances or other people. The biblical myth maps the source of suffering back to the eating of the apple of discord and the expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise. The first discomfort they felt was their nudity, which made them hide from God. Thus, the suffering is a tool of evolution which allows to get trained, to get experience on how to overcome this unpleasant condition. What is the nature of the suffering? We will try to categorize information about the nature of suffering. If we take a look at an animal or at an early man, the basic sources of their suffering were illness, physical trauma, or threats to their very life. These conditions generated pain and fear. These were the dominating factors of suffering. After the individualization of man, in the process of the development of psychic sphere of life, mental experiences began to prevail over the physical ones. Even in the foreseeable period of history, we see how the medieval customs led to disrespected honor and dignity of a person, which became a source of sufferings, torments, and grief. We are familiar with the genre of French romance novels describing suffering due to the unrequited love, infidelity, or jealousy. Contemporary youth perceives these stories without irony. Times have changed. Today, it is possible to defined the broken self-respect or hurt false pride as the dominating tone of suffering. The sufferings associated with so-called creativity torments are increasing. We have noticed that the evolutionary progression of mankind is associated with the change of the dominance of the very nature of suffering. Is there any consistent pattern in such a development? Can we say that the suffering makes us moving in a certain directions? When Nancy wrote me that the topic of this session was beyond suffering, I first of all verified meaning of the word beyond in the dictionary. The word suffering was familiar for me. However, I would like to thank the English language for the variety of nuances provided by the word beyond, which is especially pronounced in a combination of words beyond suffering. Let's take a look at the Christian concepts of suffering. The doctrine of Christ teaches us that the suffering inevitably accompanies man in the course of his life, and then it is a result of his sinfulness. The suffering is inevitably because the sinfulness is not only an acquired, but also inherited quality of man. The Christianity teaches us that the suffering purifies the soul and considers the suffering to be a ladder for the spiritual ascension. Christianity teaches us to be merciful to those who suffer, calls for giving alms for the needy. It offers individual relief from suffering and sins through repentance and forgiveness. These recommendations have powerful transformational potential. They are able to awaken the conscience, the internal moral code of the person, to awaken its latent internal divinity. This is the way in the position out of suffering, which is just being dissolved and disappeared. Why the results achieved in 2000 years are so modest? Maybe because despite the deep truth which is embodied in this formula, the Christian Church makes money by selling the indulgences. Now let us turn to Buddhist tradition. Buddha also taught us that the suffering is inevitable in man's life. Desires, passions, as well as ignorance, lack of the knowledge of the true nature of things are the reasons of suffering. Compassion towards the sufferers is a duty of each true follower of the Buddha doctrine. In order to get rid of suffering, it is recommended to get rid of desires and to acquire the ability to distinguish various manifestations of the surrounding world. These recommendations also possess an internal transformational potential and induce the person to establish control over his lower nature, to shift the consciousness focus to the mental level, to the level of observer, and to take the position outside or apart the things that deliver suffering. In The Voice of Silence, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky describes the 7 gates through which the traveler who has the courage to follow the spiritual way should pass. It's just the middle, the 4th gate, Vairagya, which opens the way to acquire the indifference to pleasure and suffering. Of course, in this fragment, the internal way is described, and the indifference concerns first of all the personal suffering of man. The point is that in order to develop the wisdom of perceiving various life lessons and the understanding of causal relationships, the person should drain the cup of his grief and should reach the threshold of suffering. Such indifference is a consequence of the conscious life experience. Thus, for such a meaning, the word combination after suffering is more appropriate. In addition, we should not forget that it is only the middle of the spiritual way. What does overcoming of suffering and doing beyond the suffering limits brings us? First of all, compassion, mercy, and sympathy. The suffering refines the soul of a person and makes one's heart open. The suffering allows the person to clear and pacify his personal nature in order to enable the manifestation of his divine qualities, the higher merits and virtues. It is only then when we'll be able to help the others to rise above themselves. In today's world, a lot of people are ready to demonstrate their compassion to the needs of the mankind and to other kingdoms of nature on our planet. They unite for common actions, and the influence of such associations steadily increases every year. It is a kind of one of aspects in the modern globalization process. Our planet is called a vale of grief. However, it is also a forge for bodhisattvas. On the one hand, the suffering might be understood as the manifestation of person's weakness, lack of ability to control himself, to soberly evaluate the circumstances and his own capabilities, to take over the responsibility for one's deeds. In addition, it often happens that the person succumbing to such weakness runs into depression or apathy. He accuses the entire world, begins drinking or taking drugs because he is unable to cope with himself. It leads to loss of control over oneself when the strong will efforts cannot break through a veil of gloomy thoughts and feelings. The Atman is powerless to affect the personality. To be more exact, the personality becomes unreceptive to the own higher nature. Sometimes a short-sighted but willing to help person starts consoling a friend and takes over the responsibility for solving the problems that causes suffering to the dear. For example, what is the reaction of parents in the situation when their child does not know how to fasten his shoelaces? Often, being in a hurry, the parents themselves fasten their shoelaces because it is easier for them. They thereby offers their help to the dear that only makes the child weaker and more dependent on another people and circumstances. Under these circumstances, in case of strong emotion outburst, the best option for the compassionate help is to wait quietly and kindly, and then to follow with a friendly discussion. In case of chronic depression, it is recommended to gradually return the person to the positive perception of the world through dialogue with the beauty, arts, music, nature, poetry, etc. On the other hand, the suffering can be perceived as a manifestation of strength of the person. It is a kind of a check of his virtue of stability, indestructibility, or firmness. By overcoming the suffering, the person becomes more human, more loving, and wise. he apprehends his strengths and weaknesses better and becomes a master of his personality. It goes without saying that it is possible and necessary to help him in such an effort. What could be the compassion in such a case? I would like to refer to classics. The Bible provides a perfect example. God tested Job and delivered a terrible blow to him. All Job's children have died. His body became covered with ulcers, and he appeared sitting on a mound of manure. Then his friends arrived to console him. However, what did they do? They sat down at a distance from him, and they did not say a single word for him for 7 days. It was the manifestation of the compassion containing the power of love. In this case, we can use the following wording to rise above the suffering. Such compassion is demonstrated by the surgeon, experienced psychologist, or lawyer. Such strategy is often applied by spiritual guides, the masters, to their disciples. Now, my dear friends, I would like to establish the association between what I've just said about the suffering and the activity of TOS. Charitable activity is an internal need for many of us. Moreover, at a certain stage of a spiritual way, the selfless, disinterested aid for the sake of common good becomes the natural lifestyle, the line of the least resistance. Such activity is rather art than just work or fulfillment of duty. We should always focus our effort on elimination of the reasons of sufferings, and not just on the correction of consequences. The reasons are in the sphere of person's perception of the world. We should learn how to make our charity, both individual and collective, not indulging weaknesses of the person, not creating his dependency of other people or circumstances. Our aid and participation should promote finding the power of love by those for whom it is assigned. I think that the priority directions of charity include nurturing and education, enlightenment, public involvement in joint creative or charitable activity. In summary, it is necessary, first of all, to emphasize the following. First, the suffering of man is inevitable. It is associated with the very nature of our self-being. This is the way our personal nature is reacting to the impact of the surrounding world and is apprehending this world and itself. Second, suffering experience develops the spiritual sphere of person by opening his heart to love, compassion, and mercy. Third, to show compassion to other person or to the nature is an easy task which requires experience, wisdom, patience, and ingenuity. I would like to wish each of us to develop such qualities and skills for implementing them successfully in our work for our order of service. Let's master this art of compassion together. I wish the best of success to all of us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Svitlana. Our next speaker is Suvralina Mohanty. Suvralina is a postgraduate in maths and holds a PhD diploma in human resource management. She has more than 20 years of industry experience. Her core areas of expertise are strategic HR management, research, and delivery in training and development. She has helped many startups and SMEs in setting up HR practices, organizational restructuring, competency mapping, performance management, training, etc. Her key competencies are people management skills, flexibility to interact with people from various educational, social, emotional, and psychological backgrounds. On the personal front, she possesses a positive outlook towards life and is a member of the Theosophical Society of India. She has addressed youth camps on motivating and leading youth. She is associated with NGOs and organizations working for holistic development of children. She believes in simplicity, and her attitude towards accepting people as they are has made her lead a balanced life. Her versatile experience and experimental acumen has truly made her an excellent mentor who understands core issues, shares real-life experiences, and cares about people she associates with. Suvralina.
So I've got 20 minutes to speak, right? Okay. Dear brothers and sisters, I was actually wishing to show a slideshow. Lucky me that I've got a printout. I could read it out. Okay. While I share my experience and my views on this topic, I would first of all like to put up some questions. When I was actually getting into the writing for this topic, 3 things that came to my mind, 3 questions. What is suffering? When or why do we suffer? And how do we deal with suffering? We humans are different from animals because of our consciousness. That gives us the ability to harbor and interpret our memories and also project our visions for the future. Our extraordinary minds allow us to live far outside the reaches of our present moment and circumstances. Because of this, we get the opportunity to relive and sensationalize the negative events of our past and anticipate catastrophic misfortune in the future. The damage we do to ourselves in our minds often far exceeds that of the actual events. It's all for our anxiety. The suffering we create in our mind is only taking away the precious moments, so it's better we manage our negative emotions so that we make each day better. Some of our thoughts and our actions. Whatever we see around today, these all have been an outcome of our thoughts and actions of our past years, past lives. And certain amount of efforts has gone into this. Hence, whatever we do today will add to our future. We suffer not for our actions, but for our motives. Almost every action we take, it is driven by some underlying motives. This can be social recognition, love for the work, service, security, or even fear. This motive differs, and thus the action can be either externally driven or internally driven. If we closely observe our motives, we can very clearly see and check if you are doing something with an expectation or acceptance. While our motive is to give something by a particular action, by keeping an expectation, we will for sure suffer if it's not made. When we do the work for the sake of the work only and nothing else, there is no expectation, no anxiety, no fear. We simply accept it at work at hand and keep on doing that. All is in the self. S capital. The one is recognized everywhere. The first great step towards the attainment of this realization is the law of duty. It's progressive, as evolution is progressive. We must begin by studying our own place on the great ladder of evolution, by studying the circumstances around us that show our karma, by studying our own powers and capacities, and also ascertaining our weaknesses. To all and each one that we meet in this life, we owe a duty. No one who comes within the circle of our life, but we have a duty towards that person. And how do we operate? Let's come to that. When we are ready, we are getting ready to take up this responsibility of service, we operate from a different mindset. We no more see problems as problems. We see each crisis as an opportunity. When we are ready to serve, we are no more in problem zone of our life. We instantaneously shift, jump to the solution zone. For every little suffering we see around us, we visualize the bigger picture and extend it to what can be done. And that's the beginning of doing away with suffering, because we get action-oriented. When we operate from a solution zone, we convert a bigger problem to smaller ones. That gives us confidence to take it easy. That changes our whole perception about that problem. That makes us realize that every problem given to us is to solve. Problems are actually meant to be solved. If you notice, generally, when someone talks about a problem in a group, in the peer group, in friends, in families, relatives, colleagues, or simply share the same problem with someone else, the instant response of the other person is to add more anxiety, more fear, more worries. Yes, it had happened with me also. It's really frightening. Oh, how are you going to manage it? These are the reactions we give. Does that really help? Our focus has to be on the solution and not the problem. The moment we shift the thought to what could be possibly done to do away with that problem, we get a fresh outlook. If we are not a part of the solution, we are part of the problem. So the choice is ours. So let us choose on which side we are. Coming to the purpose of life in service. Helping and enabling are two different dimensions of service. Helping is a very short-term approach, and enabling is a long-term one. And to enable someone means we need to make him understand that basics of life, like purpose of everything that happens around, laws of cause and effect, evolution of life. When we see people suffering, we get concerned for a while. At times we think of doing something little and something which is in our reach to help the person out. And in some cases, we are actually least bothered. What is happening around us? We are so indifferent. We get into a different thought process in which we assume that we are not the right persons to address these issues and we are not capable enough to do anything. But when we start thinking that for every problem, every disconnect, every suffering in the mankind, there is always a way out. We get involved in taking the right approach and measure to contribute towards well-being of all. The very question that we ask to our own selves, what are you doing for others? This shows us a new way of life. Our life has a purpose, and we must live that purpose. We are part of a great plan of evolution, and if we have a definite role, we must do that. The purpose of life is just not to be happy, but to be useful. With this awareness, we serve selflessly and effectively. We get no more concerned about the results of our efforts, but we keep on causing good. We also do not evaluate how grand the service is as compared to other individuals or other groups. It really doesn't matter. Let us focus on work at hand and create greatness in whatever we do in our daily life. We all are equal and deserve equal treatment in the society we live in. Whenever there is suffering out of poverty, sickness, unavailability of resources, it needs an immediate remedy, and that is our responsibility. We cannot ignore that. Whatever we are doing, we are channelizing the services directly out of our own capabilities or routed through certain other group of people or organizations. At the end, what matters is the service given, so that there is no disparity. A wholesome society should be our final goal if we are aiming at serving others. We should work towards involving as many people as we can so that we address the issues effectively on time and we create a world of serving. While we deal with suffering and we are helping others, we need to understand and have clear-cut clarity on certain things. I'll just pick up two things which are core to my heart. Those two are pain versus suffering. Number one is pain versus suffering. Why is there pain? God's plan is evolution. We live and evolve in the lower three worlds: physical, emotional, and mental. Evolution happens by experience gained in these three worlds. Since these are worlds of relativity, not of absolute truth, so duality is the nature of the thing. This is the reason in these worlds we cannot know sweetness if we do not know bitterness. We cannot know success if we do not know failure. We cannot know happiness if we do not know pain. Having said this, it naturally follows that pain is not only inevitable, but it is necessary for this evolution. Does this mean that we are condemned to suffer? No. Suffering is a choice because it depends on our response to the pain. This is the most important difference between pain and suffering. To focus beyond suffering means to choose not to suffer despite there being pain, or to enable others not to suffer despite their experience pain. Choosing not to suffer when there is pain has three different aspects. This teaches us pain is inevitable and it has to be taken as is. This makes us realize happiness doesn't come cost-free. It requires some struggle. That also exposes us to the very truth of life. I'm sure many of you would have experienced this. Wanting positive experience is a negative experience. I repeat, wanting positive experience is a negative experience, while accepting negative experience is a very positive one. The second thing which I was talking about, other than pain versus suffering, is I am not special. When I understand and claim that I am not special, that helps me absorb that everyone is unique and so am I. Yes, I am unique, but I am not special. This stops me from special entitlements like I am awesome, rest of you all suck, so I need special treatment, or I suck because I have diseases, I'm poor, I'm unlucky. That's why you are awesome, you all are awesome, and I'm sucking. I deserve some special treatment. No, it doesn't apply. I would like to share a real life story. This was through a television show which was about recognizing the people who made a difference. In that show, a mid-aged lady was awarded for her contribution to unprivileged children, and while she was interviewed on how she started her journey, she was narrating her story of her life. Her husband was an army officer, and both of them were involved in charity work. The husband died young, and before his death, the couple had planned a charity show in which both had to perform. Initially, the lady was reluctant and was not able to think through how to manage everything all alone. But with the help of some of their colleagues, common friends, she finally got ready. More than the event and the contribution to the charity work she still continues to do, what I still remember from her interview is something that gave a beautiful spark of thought. While she was narrating how she accepted a sudden death of her husband, she said, "When I experienced that, when I heard that news, it was like a huge mountain on my head. I was not able to move that mountain at all. But then there was something which helped me convert that mountain to smaller chunks of actions that I could possibly figure out to move on." That was an instant thought, why not me? Very often we see people giving reaction, why me? When they suffer from any incident, anything bad comes to us, we say, why me? I was so good, I am so noble, why this happens with me? This is one instant reaction almost every one of us gives, why me? But the very thought the lady got from her sparks of thought, why not me? That particular thought gave her all the answers, as she said in the interview. See how beautiful it is to live with such a thought. Why not me? Anything happens to us, anything seemingly bad, this very simple question, why not me? Why should I claim to be special? Why should everything be all right with me every single time? What did I do? What wonderful work I did that nothing would happen to me, nothing bad to happen to me? Embracing every event of life becomes easy when we look at things with a fresh outlook, with fearlessness, with completeness. So choices are not just to be made, they are to be converted to habits. We keep learning every moment, and so every variety of choice has to be practiced. Unless we make those choices our habits, we will not do justice. Choices have to be lived. If I have to create a space in which I can operate, no one else is going to create for me. It's a choice. I have to choose if I'm going to be on the problem side or on the solutions. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is my choice. The rules of life are same for all. I must choose to be happy. I must accept the things as they are. Now coming to the motto of TOS. The motto of TOS is a union of all who love in the service of all that suffers. When we are ready at an individual level to spread awareness, write knowledge, serve without any selfish motives in our day-to-day acts, those will be meaningful acts. As we connect with all, we get concerned about all, we truly start caring. We truly start sensing the responsibility towards the world by us. We all must remember that all beings are living and that life force in everything, everyone is the same, though it seems different. This thought, once kept in back of our mind, will always help us connecting with every single thing that we see around. Once realized, we will always look for opportunities in every challenge. We will be positive throughout and will be ready to spread positive vibes wherever we are, wherever we go. Interestingly, I consider every one of us as centers of peace and happiness, aren't we? So wherever we go, amidst all chaos, amidst all disconnect, all war, all suffering, we are the center of peace, each of us. With positivity comes selflessness, comes giving attitude. And when we have that giving attitude, we are willingly serving others. That willingness is coming. So in short, Union is beyond suffering. Love is beyond suffering. Service is beyond suffering. Let us choose to live life with this very thought. Pain is experienced in the same space in which we are evolving, same three physical, emotional, and mental worlds. Lack of material and physical comfort, like shortage of resources, poverty, ill health, disease, injury, these are all causing us physical pain. Negative feelings caused to one another by insensitivity, greed, jealousy, lack of empathy, understanding, and compassion, death of a loved one. This gives us emotional pain. Negative thoughts created by past memories, future anticipation, anxiety I call it, prejudices, unfulfilled expectations, this gives us mental pain. Suffering arises out of all these three types of pain, which shapes general behavior of people. In most cases, their behavior gives rise to more pain, creating a vicious circle. So how are we going to break this circle? Basic survival needs must be taken care of. This requires financial resources. TOS, as well as most of the NGOs, corporates of the world, are rendering services primarily in this space. But to truly go beyond suffering, the emotional and mental suffering must also be addressed. Does this seem more difficult? Actually, with right knowledge, this is not difficult. First, understand that all emotional and mental suffering is due to ignorance. Removal of this ignorance is the most important service that TOS can render. We can remove this ignorance by putting into our own practice the timeless truths proclaimed by Theosophy. These truths give us right knowledge. There is only one life. Universe is guided by the immutable laws of love and justice. Love heals the soul, ceasing all emotional and mental suffering. Give love to every child. Show compassion to the poor. Speak a kind word to somebody who is sick. Behave kindly and compassionately with someone who is emotionally injured. They get healed in turn, and they behave kindly and compassionately with other people. It has a ripple effect, and it spreads. This doesn't need your money, only a willingness to serve from your heart. Law of justice brings acceptance of all our circumstances. This is the theory of karma, of cause and effect. Perform duty or work without expectation. Accept your present as the result of previous causes that were put into motion. Initially, it is actually difficult. But the moment we realize whatever is happening with me, I have caused it. And whenever something is not happening with me, so let us go and cause it. We are the creators. We are the co-creators. So we have caused, so we can always go and cause. Accept death as a part of the circle of life in the great pain of evaluation. Educating people about these truths removes ignorance and consequently leads them beyond mental and emotional suffering. The best way to educate is to practice what we preach. Even if we fail, we will stand up and try again. Nobody is perfect. We can always try. I'm a student of maths. I always say, I will tend to be perfect. I hope you will understand, right? There is a tending arrow mark. We are not perfect, but we can always tending to be perfect. So always put into practice these truths in the service that you perform. Leading ourselves and others beyond suffering enables each one to understand God's plan of evolution and ultimate purpose of our life. There is one very thing which all of us can do. We all have something in common and abundantly to give to the world. Do you know what is that? That is to spread happiness, peace, and love beyond suffering through one particular thing, that is by giving thoughts. Can we? Yes, we can. Let there be peace, harmony, and abundance. Please join me in spreading happiness, peace, and love. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhag bhavet. Namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you, Suvralina. That was beautiful. And thank you for reminding us to choose well, to have compassion. And I do apologize to you for the non-working of the technical equipment. I know that's, yes, you can. Okay.
So our next speaker is none other than our lovely sister Nancy. I will read out a brief of her bio. Nancy Secrest, the International Secretary of the Theosophical Order of Service, began studying metaphysics and comparative religion in childhood. She encountered Theosophy in her early 20s and joined the Theosophical Society in 1980. Nancy served as National Secretary of the Theosophical Society in America, TSA, from 1988 through 1990. A certified public accountant by profession, Nancy subsequently served as National Treasurer of the TSA for 18 years. She currently holds the position of International Treasurer of the Theosophical Society. Nancy became the International Secretary of the Theosophical Order of Service in December 2014. Since then, she has traveled in the USA, Europe, and India, giving presentations, talks, and workshops on TOS work around the world and related topics. So here we present Sister Nancy.
There is a poem compiled in a convent during the Middle Ages called The Travels of the Mother of God Among the Damned. In it, the Mother of God visits hell and, guided by the Archangel Michael, travels through hell, seeing the tortures of the poor souls there. Among them are those known as the damned, who gradually sink into a burning lake of brimstone and fire. The worst of them disappear from view, forever to be forgotten by God. There is no hope of redemption for them. They have simply vanished. The Virgin is shocked. Tears flow from her eyes. She falls to her knees before God, pleading that all should be forgiven. God reminds her of the execution of her very own son by such as these. In the poem, she then commands that all saints, martyrs, angels, and archangels should prostrate themselves with her before God, imploring him to turn his wrath into mercy. Imagine a field, a horrible field, of suffering humanity slowly sinking into the mire. Can you see it? With just their heads above ground? Then imagine them being lifted into a field of loving light through the love and compassion of others. A field beyond suffering. How could this be accomplished? Who would do it, and why? The picture I've just painted is pretty drastic. It's one of ultimate suffering. One could call it self-imposed suffering in this case, because these are souls who committed the worst atrocities known to us. Things such as genocide, serial murder, torture, and maybe worse things that our imaginations cannot even begin to comprehend. This poem is said to have been compiled in a convent, so probably by Catholic nuns who believed that we have only one life to live, with reward or punishment after death. Punishment fitted to the crimes, apparently, since the poem speaks of the damned as a specific category of souls. The nuns also believed in mercy, with the Mother of God as its symbol. I have a print of Nicholas Rorick's Mother of the World hanging on a wall in my house. In it, she wears a beautiful robe of blue with a veil that covers her eyes, but not the rest of her face. Why does the veil cover her eyes? Could it be so that she cannot see the differences in people, in souls? Does she see only the one life? Annie Besant said, "There is no other in this life. All are one. Each has a different form, but the one life lives and moves in all." Is that how the Mother of the World sees it? Or the Mother of God in the poem? In the Christian faith, Mary, the Mother of God, the Blessed Virgin, is in charge of the angels. She's their boss. In the poem, she commands that all saints, martyrs, angels, and archangels should prostrate themselves with her before God, imploring him to turn his wrath into mercy. She pleads with God that all should be forgiven, that all should be redeemed. If we are truly of one life, as Annie Besant said, then it is simply logical that one and all are the same thing, and that consequently all must be forgiven. As in the poem, or in Theosophical terminology, that all ultimately attain spiritual unfoldment, spiritual transformation, self-transformation, the realization of the unity of all life, or however you would like to put it. As a Theosophist, this brings several thoughts to mind: the Bodhisattva vow, the role of reincarnation and karma, altruism, compassion, and service to humanity through the TS and the TOS. A bodhisattva is an enlightened being who has earned the right to enter nirvana. He or she has worked hard through many lifetimes and attained enlightenment, in Buddhist terminology, or spiritual unfoldment, as Blavatsky called it. However, they take a vow to forego their reward, nirvana. Instead, they vow to remain on earth to help others until all have attained enlightenment. There is a form of meditation in Buddhism called metta, or loving-kindness meditation. Performing it is said to be the quickest way to generate compassion in ourselves. There are several steps. In each of them, the practitioner, asks for happiness, good health, safety, peace, and ease. First for themselves, then for their beloved, then family and friends, then strangers, then specific persons with whom they are having difficulty, and finally, for the lowest of the low, for those the poem calls the damned. Some people find the last two steps challenging. The Bible tells us to love our enemies and to be kind to those who would do harm to us. This is not so easy if you are hurting or feeling betrayed by someone. I assure you, though, that this meditation does work to help us restore resolve our difficulties with others, and we are the better for it. The final stage is the toughest one, and many people simply can't do it, at least not at first. This stage is similar to the Mother of God asking for mercy for all, even the damned. This is the ultimate in compassion, and ultimately we will get there. For now, we can start wherever we are at. Live our lives with as much kindness, goodwill towards others, and compassion as we can muster, helping others in an attempt to lessen the suffering of humanity. The nuns who wrote the poem believed that we have only one life. Most of us here today think differently. We recognize the ideas of reincarnation to be more realistic. How can anyone learn all that we have to learn in one lifetime, under one set of circumstances, looking at life from one point of view? It makes much more sense that we experience many different lives with varying circumstances and varying points of view. When we take into account that we have had roles in our various lives as both sinners and saints, we are much more likely to forgive those who we feel have harmed us in this lifetime. We are much more likely to act with compassion towards those who are suffering. And since we all suffer in one way or another, this includes ourselves as well. Karma could be said to be a way of keeping track throughout our various lives. Karma is not an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, as some people think. It is much more complex than that. But to put it simply, it's more of a repetition of circumstances or context until we get it right. I was at the youth conference the other day where they were exploring the various kinds of yoga and gave a presentation showing TOS work as an example of karma yoga. I liked the definition that one young man had of karma yoga. He said that karma means action and yoga means union. So karma yoga can be said to be a way towards union with the divine through action, or service, as the TOS would say. If we can take a step back from ourselves, enough so that we can see the patterns in our lives, we can discover where our karma lies, or some of it at least. That then gives us a clue as to what we need to do, how we need to act in our lives, in order to resolve whatever karmic issues we have that may be holding us back from spiritual unfoldment, from the realization of unity. HPB held a practical view of Theosophy to which many of us can relate. She emphasized brotherhood, charity, mutual help, understanding, and goodwill among all. She advocated for the basic laws of life, calling brotherhood a fact in nature. Blavatsky held that the regeneration of mankind must be based upon the development of altruism. Her constant lesson to us is the necessity of subduing self and working for others. One of my teachers, Harry Van Gelder, used to say that love is the realization of unity. Annie Besant called it self-identification with all that lives and moves. HPB spoke of brotherhood as a law of nature, and the little book, At the Feet of the Master, describes those engaged in self-forgetful service as a living plume of fire. Fully realizing the unity of all life, therefore, gives rise naturally to this living plume of fire, to divine love, and fills our hearts with the purest form of love for all beings, for all that lives and moves. Compassion encompasses this love, this realization of unity, and generates the desire to help. Compassion, then, is the true basis for service. The motto of the TOS, the Union of Those Who Love in the Service of All That Suffers, succinctly states what the TOS is all about. It was formed to make the first object of the Theosophical Society active and practical. Those who do its work do so to make the universal brotherhood of humanity, true brotherhood, a living reality. Its workers are a living plume of fire that serves suffering humanity, potentially even the worst of the worst. These are big concepts and flowery words. The poem that I began with talks about the Mother of God commanding the aid of the angels to implore God to turn his wrath into mercy, to forgive all, even the damned. The work of the TOS is a practical expression of true brotherhood. Its workers attempt to lessen the suffering of humanity wherever it is found. When this is done with purity of intention and purpose, recognizing the one life flowing through all, we help to lift all into a field of light. That's a pretty daunting task. Who could have possibly accomplished such a thing? The TOS is a small organization, but as small as we are, never doubt that we and others like us, with the help of the masters, are capable of lifting human suffering into a field of light, even through the smallest acts of kindness, even as individuals and small groups. Although the ultimate task may be great, we will reach it one step at a time, one act of service at a time, one person at a time. I want to end this session with a TOS invocation for service. Spirit of the Most High, breathe into us visions of how we may best serve our fellow humans in the coming years. Teach us the meaning of intelligent, selfless service, and give us the love in our hearts toward our fellow pilgrims that will bring more peace and harmony, health and happiness to each one we contact and to all everywhere. Thank you. This session is closed.